The courtroom was so still that even the faint shuffle of papers echoed like thunder. I sat on one side of the long wooden table, my hands trembling slightly as I tried to keep my composure. Across from me sat Marcus, my husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, perfectly composed in his tailored navy suit. His lips curled into that same smug smile I had once mistaken for charm. He leaned back, confident, as though he had already won. He thought I was nothing without him. He thought he had taken everything, but he was wrong, and he was about to find out just how wrong. As the judge prepared to read my father's will aloud, I could almost see Marcus's arrogance flicker. It was the first crack in the mask of a man who believed he had complete control. I remembered the day we met, 3 years earlier, at a glittering charity gala I could barely afford to attend. I was a modest high school English teacher then, living paycheck to paycheck, grieving my father's passing. Marcus had swept in like a savior. His wealth, his polished manners, his charm, all of it made me feel seen, special, chosen. Within 6 months, he proposed with a diamond ring so large it nearly blinded me. Everyone said I was lucky, that I'd landed a man every woman dreamed of. I believed them. I believed him. Before I proceed, I want you to do me a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and drop your country in the comments. I'd love to know where you're listening to me from. Thank you. But fairy tales are lies dressed in silk. The first cracks in our perfect marriage appeared in subtle ways. He'd laugh softly when I talked about my students' achievements, calling my passion for teaching cute. When I spoke of wanting to pursue a master's degree, he'd stroke my hair and say, "Why stress yourself, Sarah? I can take care of us both." At first, I mistook it for affection, until I realized it was control. Slowly, he reduced me, chipped away at my confidence, until I began to question my own worth. At dinner parties, when his colleagues asked what I did, Marcus would answer for me. "She's just a teacher," he'd say, as though my entire identity fit neatly between those two small words. "Just a teacher." I'd smile politely while something inside me dimmed a little more each time. The way he spoke of me made me feel invisible, insignificant. But I stayed, telling myself love meant patience, that marriage meant compromise. Marcus wasn't cruel in obvious ways. He never yelled, never struck me. His cruelty was quiet, elegant, almost polite. A condescending smirk, a dismissive wave of his hand, a wordless sigh whenever I mentioned my father. My dad, a simple maintenance worker, had taught me everything about kindness and integrity. To Marcus, he was nothing but a symbol of my lowly background. "Not everyone can be successful," Marcus once said with a smirk, but at least he raised someone who married well. I should have seen the warning signs then. But love makes fools of us all. 2 years into the marriage, everything changed. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the perfumed shirts. I wasn't naive enough to ignore the signs. Still, I clung to denial. I told myself he was stressed, overworked. Then one night, I came home early from a parent-teacher meeting and found him in his study, laughing on the phone. "Trust me, David," he said, his voice dripping arrogance. "She has no idea. She actually thinks I married her for love." My blood ran cold. I froze in the doorway as he continued. "I've got her wrapped around my finger. She signed everything I needed. When we divorce, she'll walk away with nothing, not even her father's land. She signed that over as collateral. She's so easy to control." His laughter sliced through me like glass. I stood there, my entire world collapsing, my breath shallow and ragged. I wanted to scream, to confront him, but I didn't. Instead, I stepped back quietly, feeling the kind of heartbreak that steals your voice. That night I lay beside him, staring at the ceiling, listening to his peaceful breathing while my soul fractured in silence. The next morning, after he left for work, I called in sick, something I had never done before. I needed answers. Hours of searching through our documents confirmed my worst fear. He had manipulated me into signing away nearly everything. The house was in his name. Our accounts were structured, so I needed his approval for large withdrawals. The land my father had left me was mortgaged under his control. He had planned it all. Every gift, every gesture, every word of love. Days later, Marcus came home with flowers and wine. "We need to talk," he said, pretending to look sad. "We both know this marriage isn't working. Let's make it easy." He handed me divorce papers, pretending generosity. "You'll get enough to start fresh," he said smoothly. "Maybe rent a small apartment. Go back to school if you want." When I asked about the house and my father's land, his mask slipped for just a second. "Sarah, we've talked about this," he said, voice tight. "The land's collateral. It's gone. You'll be fine." I smiled faintly and said, "I'll think about it." He smiled back, unaware that for the first time, I was the one acting. That night, I stayed up reading every page of that document. It was a masterpiece of deception, his final act of control. But Marcus had underestimated me. The next day, I went to see a lawyer, a woman named Margaret Willis, sharp-eyed and calm, the kind of person who could smell deceit a mile away. After hearing my story, she leaned forward and said, "We may have a fight on our hands, but tell me about this land your father left you. Have you ever had it appraised?" I shook my head. Marcus said it wasn't worth much. Just an empty plot. Margaret smiled faintly, the kind of smile that said she knew something I didn't. "Let's find out." 2 weeks later, her call came, and it changed everything. When my phone rang that morning, I almost didn't answer. I was emotionally drained, clinging to the last scraps of hope. But Margaret's voice on the other end was calm, steady, and electric. "Sarah," she said, "you need to sit down for this." My stomach clenched. "What is it?" She paused, then said, "Your father's land isn't worthless. In fact, it's sitting on a natural gas deposit. Based on the most recent geological surveys, it's worth over $12 million. The room spun. "That's impossible," I whispered. "Not only that," she continued. "Your father also set up a trust account in your name before he passed. It's been inactive because the bank couldn't locate you under your married name. That account now holds a little over $2 million. Tears welled in my eyes. My father, the humble man who patched his work shirts and drove the same truck for 20 years, had quietly secured my future. He had seen something I couldn't. He had protected me, even after death. When the divorce proceedings began, Marcus was confident as ever. He walked into court with his expensive legal team, pretending to be the generous husband, trying to do right by his struggling wife. I said little, following Margaret's advice. "Let him underestimate you," she had said. "Let him think he's already won." The final hearing came on a crisp October morning. Marcus adjusted his cufflinks, smirking as he caught my eye. I could almost hear his thoughts. Poor Sarah, she never stood a chance. But that day, everything turned. Judge Hendricks presided with calm authority. "We're here to finalize the divorce between Marcus Chen and Sarah Chen," she began. "I understand there are disputes regarding certain assets." Marcus's lawyer stood, feigning respect. "Your Honor, the only disputed property is a small piece of undeveloped land Mrs. Chen inherited. It was used as collateral for the marital home. My client believes it should be sold to settle the mortgage." I felt Margaret's steady hand on mine before she stood. "Your Honor, if I may, there are new facts relevant to this case." Marcus frowned, leaning toward his lawyer, confused, but not yet alarmed. Margaret opened a folder thick with documents. Mrs. Chen's father, Robert Mitchell, left her 2 assets. First, the land in question, which recent geological surveys confirm contains a major natural gas reserve. The appraised value is approximately $12 million. The courtroom went silent. I turned to Marcus just in time to see the color drain from his face. His smirk vanished, replaced by raw disbelief. His lawyer fumbled with his notes, clearly blindsided. Margaret wasn't done. "The second asset," she said, her tone calm but cutting, "is a trust fund established by Mr. Mitchell for his daughter's protection, separate from any marital property. The account holds a balance exceeding $2 million. Marcus's mouth fell open. "What?" he whispered, his voice cracking for the first time. The judge turned to him. "Mr. Chen, were you aware of these assets?" He stammered. "No, Your Honor, I had no idea." Margaret calmly placed one final document on the judge's desk. "Your Honor, We also have evidence that Mr. Chen attempted to gain control of these assets through manipulation and deceit. Here are the recordings and signed documents showing his intent. The judge scanned the papers, her expression hardening. Mr. Chen, these are serious allegations. Marcus's lawyer tried to object, but the judge silenced him. Enough. It appears Mr. Chen not only concealed financial information, but also attempted fraud against his spouse. The rest of the hearing blurred into gasps, whispers, and the dull echo of the gavel. By the end of it, Marcus's empire had crumbled. The court declared the land and trust as Sarah's separate property, immune from division. Marcus was ordered to repay funds he had withdrawn from their joint accounts. His divorce settlement, the one he had planned to use to start fresh, dissolved into nothing. When the judge finalized the decree, Marcus sat there pale and silent, his once perfect composure shattered. As we left the courtroom, he turned to me, eyes hollow. "You knew," he whispered. I met his gaze and said softly, "No, Marcus. My father knew." Outside, the autumn air felt sharp and clean. For the first time in years, I breathed freely. The land that Marcus mocked, the father he belittled, had both given me freedom and justice. I didn't celebrate that night. Instead, I drove to my father's old property. The air smelled of earth and memory. I stood under the stars, whispering a thank you into the quiet wind. He had always believed my worth wasn't measured in money or status, and now finally I understood.